If you want to learn how to take raw multitracks from sounding like this,
but no one seems to remember what my name is,
to this,
but no one seems to remember what my name is,
then stick around, because in today's video, we're going to launch a new series called From Good to Great. We're going to look at all the mixing enhancements that I've done across the drums, the bass, the keys, guitars, the vocals, you name it. We're also going to do a special bonus series where we're going to look at the stereo bus, my new mix bus setup, and you guys are going to be able to come along for the entire ride. Today's video, we're starting with the drums, but first, if you're new to the Mix Academy, I want to put something in your hands. It's my free Fix It in the Mix guide. We should not have to fix anything in the mix, but most of you already know, if you've done this as a side gig or even professionally, it's an art to take something that sounds terrible, recorded poorly, and then turn it into a radio-ready mix. Well, in this guide, I'm going to show you how to do just that. We're going to look at drum replacement, blending samples. We're going to look at audio repair, how to fix poorly recorded tracks, the dreaded closet vocal. It's probably my biggest pet peeve in mixing is dealing with that roomy closet vocal. But all that and more down. Check it out. Link in the description. The free Fix It in the Mix guide. And now on to the drums. All right, so looking at the drums, we've got the kick up first. And with this, we've got just a solid sample. I created a custom sample for this band with the first song that we mixed together. See if Trigger's gonna, there it goes, a little glitchy, but got a nice solid thump, thwack, all kinds of good stuff happening with that. But what happens whenever you get a song and up comes a section where it's not just driving and rocking anymore? It's kind of like, I don't know, you need some room, right? Well, you add a roomy kick. And so I've blended a new sample and done some automation, some cool tips and tricks of that. But first, let's hear what it sounds like without it.
now I've been looking for composure,
Sounds okay, right? It sounds fine. You got a clean, punchy kick drum. Nothing to hate on except for the fact that it kind of sucks in that section. So what I've done is I blended this roomy kick and go over what sample I chose is not necessarily important, but it's the That Sound Rock Room kick leady. And again, there's the sample, except we've done some extra stuff to it. Now, anytime you blend a kick, a snare, you got multiple hits happening, you always want to check for phase. So kind of a rule number one, you blend a new sample in, it may not work right away because the phase relationship may not be good. So come over here in the Pro Q, it's nice and easy. You got the invert polarity option. I did choose to invert it. It sounded better there. Very simply put, if you invert it and you gain low end, that's probably what you want to go with. Sometimes it'll be to where you invert it and it just kind of shifts the low end. You get a different low end sound from it. It could be deeper, it could be a little more in the 100 hertz range, but often it's just going to be a simple kind of, you think like a snare top and bottom. If they're out of phase, it sounds like garbage, it sounds super thin and papery, but you invert the polarity and now all of a sudden, or flip the phase, right? You get that more thick bottom end happening. And so that was the case here where I needed to invert the polarity for this one to get these two to play well together. But here's the sample by itself. Here's without my reverbs or any processing. So already has a nice extension to it. Very different from the dry, which is a nice tight punchy kick drum. So the two together sound like this. And then I added a subsplash. I'll show you those settings here in a second, which is going to extend the decay all the more and just kind of carry out for this particular song, this section. I just felt like it sounded good to have that elongated sound. Cool. So the subsplash, if we come down here to my effects, you're going to see the subsplasheroo, I call it. I've got an EQ that boosts bottom end into a reverb. And often what I'll actually do is this will be the standard subsplasheroo in my template is a high cut and only allows like 70 hertz and below. It's truly just a subsplash. But in this case for this song, I like the way that the mid range and the top end even sounded. It's a little bit of top end. So I kept it, but I EQ it either before or after the reverb. In this case, I did it before. And this is my Subsplash preset. It's from the Bricasti emulation inside of Verb Suite Classics, brought to you by Slate Digital and Liquid Sonics, and not sponsored. And Spaces 2 Ice House. This one just super long. I've boosted the decay 8+ seconds. I don't know. Those are the settings. You can check that out. I've cranked down on the highs and the mids, so it's really just the lows. Again, Subsplash. This is, you'll see it on the toms when we look at the toms on this track. This could be great for 808s. You want a little extension or something, automate it up and kind of fade it in. Sub drops, that kind of stuff. Bass drops. The Subsplash. So that from up here, again, sounds like this. Okay, and then that's great, showing it off in solo, but what does it sound like in context? Here is in the mix with no roomy kick. And then with it. Yeah, and so there's a section at the end of this where I've actually increased the Subsplash so it really spills out into the room more. Check this part out. Like a subtle bass drop, right? So it's not super intense, but it certainly adds character. Whereas before, the song just had this.
But I love myself either way.
And that's fine, but again, from good to great, right? Cool. So there's the kick drum, a little bit of enhancement there. I'm sure I've got other automation and some stuff. You can see some levels. Maybe I pulled that back in here at the end of the song. But moving on, we're going to take a look at the snare. Now, again, I created custom samples for the band with the first song that we mixed. I pulled those in. I created a TCI file for them. And now the snare is a one-shot in Trigger. Gotta love the glitch with Trigger that prevents you. Gotta make it inactive, pull it back in, and then it'll work, and then we can actually click on it and get a sound. But there's the one shot from the band. Now, I've blended that with a snare ambience track. And again, got to do the off and on. Cool. So those two samples, custom samples, I've created those from a blend of stuff I've recorded and some other stuff. Feel free to check out the link, the Mix Academy's VIP. I'm going to walk you through this month. We're featuring this song, all the custom samples that created that, and you'll get the samples along with your membership. But moving on, then we have a chamber. Okay, let's take a look at what that one was. The Nav snare chamber, again, custom sample built for the band. And so the three of them together sound like this. Who cares about solo? Here's context.
Remember what my name is. Nothing ever happens around here.
So certainly getting the transient from the Nav snare, and then we're getting kind of the ambience and top end from these other two. But the blend of those, let's come out here. There's a section I really wanted to show off for you guys. I think it's going to inspire you. Back when I did my Pro Tools expert certification, man, I forget, was it Pro Tools 5? Was it 6? I think 5 was pre-OS 10. OS X drops, I think it was 6. I had an instructor, and they had their hands on Switchfoot's Meant to Live session. As a diehard Switchfoot fan, I was like, dang, man, I just paid $5,000 for this certification and I get Switchfoot's session. I didn't get the session, but I got to play with it in the class. And one of the things that stood out to me was not only were they using the pod, remember the old pod, little red guitar amp sim, as a blend to real amps to enhance the real amp tone. They also had this really cool snare sound that for the fill, you remember that kind of thing happening. It gets louder, wider, and just the automation on it was incredible. I don't remember what the automation was. That was a long time ago, man. I was like, I think it was 17 or 18. I'm almost 40 now. But the sound has stayed with me, right? And so that automation, I'm always on the journey, the chase to get that snare fill thing happening. And in this song, I kind of got close. Let me see, where's that, the snare fill that I want to show off? Oh, here it is at the end, right before the big section. Okay, so we have this. This is not like that exact example, but it's something. So here, let's take a listen to the dry, no effects. Okay, so sounds good. We have a good series of snare samples. I think it sounds great. Check this out. Again, from good to great. We're just taking it and adding a little bit of enhancement, a little bit of love to help it shine, for the mix to not just sit stale and boring and whatever. So here's the automation that I've done for this. I'll show you in solo, and then we'll break it down. And then without the automation, no, right? So here's what we have going on. And this is the first time I've ever used this, but I've got a stereo dimension D being automated, which is a widening tool I use every mix just about on vocals, especially at the chorus of a track. Give the vocals that extra wide, strong presence, sit on top of the track. But that down here, the UAD, I don't know if I'm using the UA in this particular mix, but the stereo dimension D. Yep, so I have the Studio D. UA added to their Spark lineup, so I was able to get that back. But modulation mode 2, and it's in stereo. And then I followed that with a little bit of a widening tool. You get the Slate Digital bundle is going to give you the kilohertz bundle as well. And so I've got, 200% on the width. And that's just going to add even more width to this effect. And so if we come up here and we look at it, I'm not just turning it on and turning it off, right? I'm unmuting it. So you can see I've got the mute automation. Let's see. And then we've got the line here where I've drawn in. You could ride the fader, you could draw it in, pick your poison, but it starts out low, and then that last hit should be wider than the rest. So let's check just that effect out. Here's without it. Cool sound, but not enough. You can hear it. Just that alone is taking that snare sample, enhancing it, and giving you that similar Meant to Live, Switchfoot, stereo enhanced snare for the fill. It gets louder, but it gets louder on the sides, which is a really cool effect. Is it ever enough, right? More is better, right? So sometimes. So we're moving on, and I've created a Blue Cats Patchwork preset where I've got the, I call it the snare, what did I call it? Snare saturation or something? Snare sat auto for automation. And I'm driving saturation with the London. This thing, I use this on every mix all the time. One of my favorite saturation tools. It's quick, it's easy, it's got a mix knob, it has everything you need. And then for this one, I wanted to get a little bit brighter, a little bit more hairy on the top end. And so I pulled open the lift and dialed in a sound that I thought sounded good. And then came over here, you can see the mix knob is at 1%. It's basically off at the beginning. And then we got to come over here, Blue Cat, we got to step it up, man, and get the control so we can command control click and pull up in our automation lanes. But you can see here, it's not that much of it, but you're going to hear it. We go from a little bit, and then we crescendo this effect up. We raise it up, automate it up, and we're going to get this cool thing happen. And here's without the stereo dimension D, so just the new saturation with top end. I mean, that is so subtle, it's not even funny. Here, let me exaggerate it. Now you can hear that last hit is saturated, right? And so the reason why this is subtle, I started with it much higher. Let's pull it up for example's sake. You can hear that saturation. It sounds crispy, man. I love that. But this, getting a little more saturated, paired with the stereo dimension D, is really where it's shining. And then one more step, I threw on the Sunset Chamber. You can see I've unmuted that just for this fill. And here's what that sounds like. So now we're throwing it into a chamber a little bit along the way. And so as it gets louder, it's getting louder in the reverb as well. Pretty cool effect. One more time, let's take a look with none of this. In context, and then with our effects. After a word from Pro Tools error. Gotta love that, man. Moving on, we beat the snare to death. Let's move on and talk about the toms. Now, there's not a lot of tom hits in this song. Kind of rare. We got just this one fill and then one tom hit there. I mean, it's grooving, didn't need it apparently. So we've got the rack, we've got a rack 2, and then we have 2 floor toms. So take a listen. These toms were well recorded, but I chose to replace them because, as is the theme with this song, we're going for that modern rock, larger than life, hyper real sound. I just felt like the normal toms were nice, clean, but they didn't do justice to this part. So here's an example of, let me pan them a little bit so you can hear a little bit of a panning effect, and then we'll put that one like out there. Solo them. Listen, I could take those toms, we could EQ them, suck out some of the boxiness, add some boom, compress them, yada yada, some reverb, some room sound. We can get these sounding incredible. These are really well recorded. They're tuned great. But I chose, and put these back, to go ahead and replace them. And you'll hear why when we put these back in. So now here are the replaced toms. Yeah. So those sound massive. Now, this is not necessarily about, hey, what sample I chose. This is more about something's freaking me out. I've got, that's for the effect out there. I was like, what is that automation lane doing this like gradual decrescendo from the top of the track? Sorry, OCD is real, and I have it. So, and ADHD and all the DDs. All right, moving on. So the rack tom here, it's more about just finding one that fits the song, right? This one, I wanted this big explosion. Here's in context. Yeah.
But no one seems to remember what my name is.
So that big part, I just felt like it needed this massive hit, and I'll show you the samples. This is the That Sound Afterburn Rack Tom. These guys, they went to, I think it's called Hangar. They went to an airport hangar and recorded these incredible sounding drums. And then, of course, I've got my processing that will take them from sounding like this. It's going to get louder but brighter and more impactful, tape saturation, all kinds of good stuff happening there. But that's automated. And then, of course, we have a subsplash. So let's take a look at that. The subsplash for this one... Did I automate? Oh, you know what? I did. On a different track, I automated. So we'll just show you what that sounds like with and without the subsplash. Cool. And then with it back in. Now you get that stereo. Really, it's the reverb for adding more thickness to the sound. So incredible sound there. Tom automation, more so tom replacement. Blending these samples in just wouldn't have done it justice. Just a full-on replace and making it really just hit for the track. One more time in context, here is the, with no tom replacement, we'll boost the level for you guys. Again, great sounding toms. And when we put it back with the processing and the subsplash. Yeah, dig that. All right, so we looked at the kick, we looked at the snare. What's next on my list? We looked at the toms. Now the overheads and the cymbals. Now here's the deal. This is kind of a rare occurrence for me. I got really well recorded drums on this song. Shout out to Justin Nice, my good friend, his son's band, Navigate. Again, check their links out in the description. The overheads are no exception. We have an incredible sound. Let's take a listen to the dry overhead sound. I might have heard a little bit of a pop or something on there from an edit. Yeah, right in there. You didn't hear it in the mix, so it didn't matter, but this little guy right there, again, OCD is real, man. And we're going to put that there. Let's see. Oh, I can sleep better tonight. So anyway, cymbals sound great. The overheads, they sound good. Okay, here's my processing. We got that little click happening throughout. I didn't catch that whenever I first mixed this, but here, let's switch sections. Yeah, let's listen to this. So they sound good. They're compressed, sound modern, awesome. Now we get some room sounds. Awesome. Now let's take a listen when a crash hits, and I tell you what, we'll listen to just the drums, and I'm going to mute. Spoiler alert, I added cymbal samples for certain crash hits. We've given the kick, we've given the snare, the toms some serious love. We've enhanced them with samples. This is a larger than life, trying to make this just hit and rock for the radio. Why would we not enhance the cymbals as well? Especially just to add a little thickness and bring them out. So we did. So I went and picked, I got an 18-inch and a 20-inch crash ride. This particular song, I just put them together. Sometimes I'll solo the overheads. And when the drummer hit a left crash, I'll paste a left crash sample. They hit a right, I'll hit a right one. If they have like a thinner one, I'll go find a thinner sample and do just like I would to respect the drummer's choices. I'll enhance the drums, right? But in this case, I just have these stereo, big crash, thicken the sound, and it sounds great. Sometimes you get a drum set that's not recorded well, and you got to go reprogram a hi-hat sample with a superior drummer or something like that. You got to go find you a crash ride, and you're enhancing the crash ride. We didn't need any of that with this. We not only had really well recorded overheads, they also provided a left crash and a right crash mic, and could blend that in and fade that in. But anyways, I chose to use crash samples. Here are the samples by themselves. Guess what? They were from that sound. Check them out. I think they're on Splice now. I know they're on Splice now. I don't think they even sell their stuff individually anymore, packs and whatnot. It's all on Splice. Okay, that doesn't sound great in solo, but check this out. Okay, got that room mic coming through. Here's in the context of the track. Here's with the cymbal samples. That's the intro, and then here's without them. Sounds fine. It was just a little thin, and so lots of ways to skin that cat. You can come up here and add a little more weight to the overheads, but I didn't want to pull out the kick or snare and the overheads because I've heavily replaced them. For this particular song, I didn't blend. I full-on replaced that thing. So cymbal samples throughout. Here's a good, maybe a section right in here.
Trying to subdue the pain.
Back on.
Try to understand the feeling.
And it just gives it a lift, man. It just helps fulfill the vision of that modern, hyper-real sound, larger-than-life mix. And so we also, I think these were my decision, we're kind of producing in the mix here with the permission of the band and the producer himself, Justin. We've got effects, destroy. I added some stuff. I felt like that was a cool effect to have for the snare crash. Got this reverse sound that I actually reversed the reverse sound, so I got the full-on thing. Got a little bit of EQ for each of those, but just trying to enhance the one here.
My name is.
One more time with them.
My name is.
And then without them.
My name is.
So you go from just a dry, clean cymbal crash, which sounds good. We've enhanced it, but now you get that extra oomph, right? So just trying to be creative in the mix, a little bit of enhancements. I think that's all I wanted to show you for this video in the drums. But hey, if you enjoyed this and you want to see more of how I took this mix from sounding like those raw tracks to a finished radio-ready track, definitely check out this video where I'm going to show you what I did to the bass, and I'll see you over there.